Introduction. Some of you already know a lot of what I'm going to say, but I'll try and talk quickly. So, welcome. Laguna Canyon Conservancy is an all-volunteer environmental organization formed in 1988 by a group of people dedicated to saving Laguna Canyon from a huge development threat. Many longtime residents remember the well-known 1989 March in the Canyon by almost 8,000 people and the subsequent purchase of many open space acres in Laguna Canyon. More can be read on our website. Laguna Canyon Conservancy gets involved in a number of environmental issues and often partners with other conservation groups, but our main focus is preservation and protection of open space. Currently, LCC's Board of Directors is in support of California's Proposition 4, which is on this ballot this year, and it is to raise $10 billion through bonds. These bonds will fund various climate-related issues, such as clean drinking water, wildfire prevention, habitat conservation, and climate resilience projects. The proposition may offer the opportunity to secure funding for the Irvine Laguna Animal Corridor. The bond in Proposition 4 provides critical resources to mitigate the climate crisis and will benefit public health, communities in danger, and wildlife. Projects will be created to address the imminent threat of worsening wildfires, droughts, and other climate challenges. Because we are concerned about conservation and environmental justice, the LCC board supports Prop 4 as a solution to climate-related issues and to protect vulnerable natural populations. So one thing you may not know is that Laguna Canyon Conservancy does not endorse candidates for any office, but does like to contribute to the public's awareness by providing these types of meetings, which we are having today. 5 reasons all voters, not just parents, should pay attention to the local Unified School District candidate selection to the School Board of Directors is because the school board makes policy and curriculum decisions that shape what children learn by setting educational priorities. They are in charge of budget and resource allocation, controlling how district funds are spent, which impacts class sizes, teacher salaries, and facilities improvements. The school board makes school safety and well-being decisions that influence the school environment. The board is charged with accountability and leadership and ensures the district is well managed by overseeing the superintendent and holding the administration accountable for meeting educational goals. The board directs equity and inclusion promoting diversity that are vital to a fair and supportive environment for all students. So the Laguna Canyon Conservancy is interested in hearing the candidates' opinions on these items and is especially concerned about how the Laguna Beach Unified School District Board of Directors is working to prepare the next generation of environmental stewards to take care of the Earth's ecosystems. So, each of the candidates, and they're not going to be in alphabetical order, they have a numerical order, they picked numbers when they first came in. They will give their presentation. They can have 5 to 8 minutes, and then after that there are some prepared questions we will ask of each candidate to answer in approximately 1 to 2 minutes. So, and then if time permits, we will move on to audience questions. So, I'm going to ask, I think Sheri is number 1? So, all right, Sheri, come on up.
So we're going to come up there?
If you like.
Cool. That's the jungle. Hello, good evening. I am so grateful to the Laguna Canyon Conservation. Sorry. Yeah. Is that better? No, not better? Is that better? Better? Okay. Hi, good evening. I'm so grateful to the Laguna Canyon Conservancy for hosting this event and for all of you taking the time to educate yourself on the important issues facing our district and the education of our students. It's important because this election is critical for our community, as there are huge issues in front of us that involve excessive spending without leveraging community collaboration while maximizing tax dollars. This election cycle on a local level isn't a party issue. This is a community issue. And coming together as a community to stand against leadership that devalues the community voice by calling such invested tax-paying citizens that express their concerns as grievances, or which makes myself, or perhaps Howard, it's working, or perhaps a candidate such as Howard Hill's grievance candidates is very, very concerning. I'm not sure if this is a promotion, because during the 2020 election, Madam Vickers and even another board member, Jim Kelly, called us as candidates angry parents. This is exactly why change is needed and why standing up as a community is critical. It will indeed take a village, no matter what side of the aisle you stand on. My name is Sheri Morgan, and I am working hard to earn your vote. I know we're not always going to agree. I know I'm not perfect, and I'm delighted to see that one of our club's strength in numbers is focused on embracing the imperfection in all of us. But I am a voice that believes in consensus. I believe in collaboration, and I believe in compromise, and I love options. I am your option for change, and I am a voice for change. If we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, and there's many of you in here who I do know, and there's a few of you in here that I don't, stay after and let's connect. Or, when you return home, take the time to look around your neighborhood, or even look around town the next time you're out. If you see local families with high school age students or recent graduates, or college graduates, it's likely that we all know each other through that 6 degrees of bacon separation. We've had our 20th back to school night earlier this year. We even have connections and ties with the younger families and younger generation because our older kids, they babysit. So through their efforts, we reach out to families through their efforts of babysitting, they're coached, they've refereed, they're camp counselors, through the summer programs, whether it's junior guards or Stacy Vina's yoga program. We know quite a few people here in town. I'm a 34-year Laguna Beach resident, 20 years in our schools, raising 4 kids. With 1 year left until our caboose graduates, I'm excited to take my current and very relevant hands-on experience of taking our kids through the academic journey in our schools and through the college application process. Not to mention all the many stories from others along the way, and giving all of that knowledge back to our community. I recall one of our administrators just at this back-to-school night saying how being in education thought they would prepare them for what their kids would experience, but it wasn't until they actually went through the experience themselves did they feel they were actually really prepared and understood what it took. Something I think is vitally important to keep in mind as you consider and hear from other candidates this evening. We have great schools, this is true. We have great teachers, this is also true. However, as one of the top districts, as they say, spending $33,000 per student, being a district of excellence in education, leading the way with cutting-edge technology, curriculum, and robust, unique offerings is where I'd like to see our schools go. Did you know that as a community, only 21% of Laguna's households actually have school-aged children, which means 79% of our households help fund 87% of our district's $80 million budget. Yet time after time, it's been proven that we don't have a voice at the table. In fact, it's been proven that even the board doesn't have a voice at the table any longer. That came to light first at the September 2023 board meeting when a $150 million facilities plan was presented as a starting point that would involve demolishing 4 city blocks of asphalt, concrete, glass, and grass. And as I predicted, less than a year later, the board attempted to push through a modified $100 million plan and then push it off to the city, also predicted, insisting that the city partner with the district despite ignoring the suggested modifications that would save millions of dollars, minimize the impact on the community, the construction time, and the pool elements such as the community wanting a baby pool and zero entry access. Then, the fact that the community and board voice had been marginalized was on full display again at the August 14th board meeting, when our community came together to support the beautiful Sailor Jones, who was denied her constitutional right to have an education here in Laguna Beach. Arguments from the district were, our hands are tied, it's the law. Yes, because they eliminated special ed programs, they were saying that she had to go out of our district. She only needed modified English and math, which is mind-boggling considering the rest of the board didn't even know this. This isn't an election year lie or a grievance, as stated by one of my running mates. She's on record saying, don't hang this on the board. They didn't know. That's really concerning. How come she did? It's important to come together to explore issues, taking the time to educate ourselves, rather than blindly checking the box, all blue or all red. This is an overwhelmingly huge community issue, and voting this election is where we can flex our community's ability to empower our voice. I'm from Arizona. I moved here 34 years ago. My husband and I met in the scuba industry. We're longtime Laguna residents. We've invested a lot of our time here. I got involved because I was passionate about my kids. I wanted to make sure they got a great education. So I volunteered in the classroom. I volunteered on the soccer field. My husband was an umpire at Little League. He even called our son out, which of course was discussed. And he's like, what? You were out. Get out. So we're fair. We teach our kids and we raise our kids to be smart, to be mindful, to be aware of how your behavior impacts others, and to have a good character. My husband and I are very, very invested in our community. He's one of the longest parade marchers in the Patriot State Parade with Indian princesses and Indian guides, and people actually shout at him as he's walking through, look, there he is again. So, I'm a firm believer in volunteering. I started book swap, I didn't start, but I volunteered for book swap at the schools for 8 years, swapped over 25,000 books, including sending books out to the schools outside of our community. I've been a Girl Scout leader for 5 years. Is that my time's up? I've seen our district excel as well as struggle. But now we have students leaving in high numbers. Our enrollments declined 21% in 5 years, but our population's only declined 3.2%. Where are the students going? The administration staff supports have gone up staff support costs have gone up 55%, and that's important to notice because while administration salaries have only gone 38%, the overall cost for our administration has gone up 55%, but our enrollments have declined 21%. We've gone from an open and inviting community to lack of transparency, to making it difficult to find information, they lack accountability, and we're not spending our funds on academics at the secondary level to make our programs thrive. 4 years ago, our board relinquished leadership to the administration under emergency circumstances, and while that's expired, the autocratic leadership style of our administration continues on. We need to change that. I am that voice for change, and I appreciate your time, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Sheri Morgan. And like it when it works. Half the time we won't stand up. So, okay, number 2, I believe, that was Margaret Warden. Thank you.
I have this little piece of paper. Number 1, why am I here? I'm here because I just retired from the school district after working here for 20 years. Why did I go to work in that school district? Well, it wasn't my first choice. I have other careers. I have a degree in sociology from Rutgers University. I have a minor in humanities from Cambridge. I also have a 2-year associate degree, I guess I should have started with that first, from a college called Middlesex College in New Jersey. With my RN, and I passed my RN the first time I took it. At 24, sure. At 24, I was running a neonatal intensive care unit. Why am I in Laguna Beach? I was raised by coastal. I was born up in Hollywood, and due to my parents' divorce, we moved back and forth. I think by the time I was 10 years old, we driven back and forth in some foreign, broken down sports car 10 times. I want to comment on this. I've gone to 14 schools in 5 states. And, you know, I struggled a little bit. I'm an only child. And it wasn't until 9th grade when an incredible teacher by the name of Miss Collins said, gee, Margaret, you know, she's a little bit behind. And this was in a very ritzy school district called Metuchen, New Jersey. And she's in charge. Margaret needs to come over. And I was fine. And by the time I was done with her, I knew what I was doing. That's the type of commitment that we used to see in this district, where teachers took that extra time with the students. Now we have a lot of extra programs, and we have an incredible amount of extra activity programs from everything you can imagine. But we also have for those students that need extra help in reading and math. So we do offer all of this. Now you might look at me and say, well, wait a minute, well, how'd you get to that? Because I went to work in the school district. I have my emergency credentials, and I was hired to be a reading technician back before the RTI, Response to Intervention, or the MTSS programs. And I was given a room and worked with those teachers because we all worked collaboratively together. And we actually had even a lunch bunch math group where another part-time person came in. I was a full-time person. And during that era, we probably had about 3,600 kids in our school district. My daughter was a student here, as many other people that I know. And she went to all 4 schools, again, due to changes in housing and environment and divorce. But the students really they got a lot of education here. People moved to our district because it was known for its drama programs, its art programs. There were so many things. Now, things have changed. I'm not going to deny that. Is that due to a transition of school board members that maybe came in for their own needs or wants, or the luxury of not being able to work so they could devote time while their students were in school? Not certain about that. I think they're all really good people. But what I want to say to you is, having worked here for 20 years, having taught this MTSS program, which is the Tier 3 reading students at TOW, but I've also taught high school during summer school. I've worked in the IT department, in the business department, in the front office. I kind of know what's going on in our school district. I've been there. I'm the feet on the ground. I have boots on the ground. I guess it's a military way we're supposed to say that. I know what's going on. So why is the expenses gone up? Why are salaries percentage-wise? At the forum, at the Women's Club, I read the names of all the new positions that had to be created. ALCAP came along looking for controlled funding, and we had to be responsible. Why is there a third, administrative superintendent, assistant superintendent? Because requirements that are needed. And I've mentioned this over time. Why is our census down? Our census is down because people can't afford to live here anymore. Let's get realistic. When you have Airbnbs, there are those little cottages that are so adorable that people lived in, and they paid $1,100 or $1,500 a month. And I use this as an example because I'm transparent. The house that I owned, that I bought for $340,000 in 1984, and in the divorce was market down 25%, so yes, it can drop. Sold for $760 to someone who was not going to live in it. It's a 4,000 square foot home. 2 years later, it was sold for just over $1 million, and that person still lives in that house as a second home. Their primary home is in La Jolla. So you can see there's not many kids been living in that house. That's what's happened. Right up and down and see, why were there so few kids? Now we've taken on the Autobahn, and I now live in the Autobahn, so if anything, I see the kids. I did go to the numerous meetings to try to get transportation out so we could cut down some of the traffic on the Laguna Canyon Road as the kids were driving into school or their parents were driving them back and forth. So there is some new grant money coming, and I do understand we may have some trolleys and such going out in that area. But realize half that street is Laguna Beach. What happened to Club Laguna? Club Laguna, we had 130 kids there. And when they changed it to the Artesians, 130 kids moved out of El Toro, out of the El Moro, they were living on that El Toro area. So why is it less? There's a lot of reasons less. Also, people are not having babies. It's reality. It's happening in every school district. But I have a couple of things that I would like to offer that are positive things. I just listened to a radio program, and I did not get the lady's name, so I will get it and I will put it somewhere. And she talked about the 3 reasons our millennials are failing. They can't work. They go to jobs, they get fired. The first one is they've been raised by bulldozer parents. I've never heard that term before. Helicopter, lawnmower, bulldozer. The kid can't fail. And then they get pushed through college, and when they get out and they get that job, you're not sure what to do, and that's COVID's fault. You're not socialized. You know, we were all stuck in our houses and the kids played on video games. And then the third, which I was amazed with, she said the kids are feral. They have no socialization whatsoever. They're not capable of communicating and accepting responsibility. So when we look at that, is that the school's fault here now? I'm wondering. For those of you who are parents, you might give that some thought. On a much more positive note, for our students, they need to be taught Spanish at the elementary level. And 57% of students in California schools right now speak Spanish. Think about that for just one moment. We have one Spanish teacher that goes between the 2 schools. In 1958, so you can guess how old I am, I was living in Miami. I don't know why we were living in Miami, but we were. And I went to a segregated school. But I was being taught Spanish because the Cubans were coming from Cuba, because in 1959, Castro took over. So you might again want to think about that. Another situation is 54% of the students graduating, and this is from the California Ed site, so you can go up and get it, are first-time household graduates. What does that say? It says the whole community of what was California has changed. Do our schools need to address these type of things? I'm less concerned about 5 extra meters at a pool and more concerned that the students in this district are being taught what they need to have to be lifelong learners when they go out, so that they can understand that you can fail, pick up, and continue to do things. We don't teach kids that. No place are they taught it. So one of my objectives is that we do have a great program through Dr. Keller. We have the resource center, we have the psychology, all the different psychologists and counselors. We have resident behavioral training, which I've been trained in. All these different things. Did I have a buzzer?
A second.
Okay. And so that's what I'm offering to you. I'm offering you the knowledge, know what's going on in our schools, have a collaborative relationship with the current school board and with administration, and whatever numbers you see about who voted for what, how many teachers really live in Laguna Beach? How many classified? Oh, I should have mentioned for 15 years I was president of the classified union also, and was nominated and awarded by President Obama, Champions of Change. I went to the White House, only 12 people in my bracket have been honored at that level. So I will give you 100% plus, but I'm not angry and mad, but perhaps I should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, everybody, hold on to your cups and whatever else is falling. Sorry, Margaret, but thank you very much. Okay, so, who got number 3? Oh, Jan Vickers, thank you.
Thank you, Gail, and appreciative to come to the LCC and share information. I don't know that we've come before during school board elections to this group. I just wanted to relay some things to you that I think show you a little bit more about me as a person. I have lived here continually since 1964, involved in the community, and then having children involved in the school in all the normal aspects that involve parents and involve community members do. The starting of the Greenbelt. I know Mr. Hills has mentioned Jim Dilley, and I'm sure he'll tell you about that, but I loved the Dilley bookstore, the old bookstore with books to the ceiling and the old wooden ladder that went around so you could get up and reach the books at the high level. It was a small community that basically closed up after Labor Day and stayed that way really for the people who lived here. It was very, very different than it is now. And we would say, people that lived here, that the visitors didn't know that you had great days in February, great days in March, and so it was a very quiet town. I went to school at UCI. I was an art major, but we had a broad breadth requirement from UCI, so I am a humanities minor, which covered a number of areas. And one class that I took that made a significant change in me was Population, the Vital Revolution. And Paula Ehrlich is involved in that movement. It really, at that time, focused on the resources of the world and the fact that we needed to be responsible. And this is a long time ago, long before we was talking about climate change. But having that personal responsibility to the resources and how it was basically, the underlying part was there were going to be too many people in the world and that they would be overusing the resources and affecting what was available. So coming out of that, I became a massive recycler. It wasn't always so popular in my house. At that time, if you saved your cans, like a soup can, you had to wait till you had enough. The only place you took them was in Van Nuys. So as more and more things opened up, and there was a time we took everything we had to OCC because they collected it for scholarships. But it becomes a way of life. And the reason that I'm sharing that is that I think if your children see that when they grow up and they see what you do and how you live and how you conserve resources, how you garden at your house, how you plant to attract the bees and the butterflies and the birds, and how you're always aware of your impact and how you use those bags at the store, which when we started using those, they didn't like it because hadn't had any experience in packing them. And so it's been way before they were required, but it's something that I see that now in my children. That's what they do. That's what they're teaching to their children. So that's where the cycle, to me, is really important. And it gets handed down as an example of how you live your life. We have rain barrels. I see, I don't see that many at different houses. My husband linked 4 of them together. We have about a 900 square foot old beach cottage that was built in 1917. So we link them together because if you have a rain barrel, you know how quickly it fills up, even when we have a heavy dew or mist overnight. So at our house, we have 5 of them. And then we use that water up, and unfortunately, it's the rainy days and you can't take anymore because your barrels are already full and you don't need to put it out. But again, it's a way of modeling that you use the resource. And for me, that goes actually hearing my father many, many years ago saying, oh, look at all that water. And we still talk about this. Look at all that water just going and going, and we don't save it. There's no way that as far as a larger community basis saves it with underground systems and things like that. But that's, again, it gets handed down. I want to move now with that background to the school district and the things that we are doing in the line of environmental literacy, environmental education, sustainability work, and I've always been very supportive of it because that's how I have lived. We have a director of environmental literacy, and we are looking at TK through 12th grade because that's what is so critical. We have the flow program at the high school. I'm sure some of you are aware of that with the presentations that the students have done. 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, they hit it every year. But when we get to those younger children, because I've seen it with younger children, and they will go home and share that information. So if they have a family that isn't necessarily following those practices, they will hear about it, and they will then say, okay, Mom, you shouldn't have put that in there. It needs to go over here, it needs to go back to the recycle center. And that is how we grow this awareness that we have a global responsibility. It's bigger than just what you do personally. It now is critical with the climate crisis. And so we have, it'll go up, they'll start in TK, they will have this environmental literacy every year. And so we will students will leave here with that knowledge and the knowledge that they have a responsibility on a global level. And so it won't be just personal, and I think it's critical, this time is critical. In addition to that, our district, as we look at any facilities work, we are incorporating moving from anything that's gas to electric, and we are looking at solar. There are lots of options for solar. We actually began years ago, Top of the World had a photovoltaic system that we put in place many, many years ago. But this will be a much larger undertaking, again, because the realization among our administration is that we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to make these changes. It comes with a high price tag. We had a firm last year that did an energy audit of all of the sites in the district, the 4 schools, the district office, and where the bus yard is in the canyon, to see what the use of gas and electric was, and to see where we need to make the changes, and to monitor that. They needed a basic point to start with. So we have that information. It was like a 150-page report, very complex, and now we're breaking it down and proceeding with plans as we move into parts of the facilities master plan. And just a point of clarification on our facilities master plan, it's a 10-year plan that is reviewed every year. It's a fluid plan. It's not a set-in-stone plan. There are things in this plan that were in a plan when the high school had significant remodels in the 90s that didn't get done because there wasn't enough funding. So they went on a waiting list. Actually, that concession stand that you see out by the football field, that was in about a 15-year waiting plan because there wasn't funds for it. And they did the work under the concrete, so it would be there when they were ready. And the only problem for that is that your construction costs go way up. They go up each and every year. But we eventually got to that, and it's a joint use plan for the sports teams, but also a concession stand for when they are having games. I think it's really important to know that the district is not isolated. They're not just renovating facilities because they want them to look good or to be grand. The plan has been massively scaled back. There are no parking structures, and the buildings that were proposed initially have been greatly reduced and modified. But again, those are on a 10-year plan. They're not, what we needed to do first was to accommodate the TK classes that were increased as the state mandate, and we started our own preschool program so that we could have what we needed to have requirements. We have a special education preschool, and those students are required to be with regular preschool students, and we were needing to take them downtown, and so now we have our own facility, so it's on the same campus, and they can do what is required. So now we are in compliance with that component. But that's required remodeling and renovation of buildings at Memorial and at Top of the World. So those came as the first priority. Let me see what else I want to tell you. 30 seconds. Okay. I just want to say that Thurston, when we reseeded the slopes at Thurston, this was several years ago, Ryan Zeta reached out to LCC and asked for advice on what to use to reseed the slopes, and we took the recommendation, and that's what they used to reseed those. So we're very interested in working with collaboration. I would just say one final thing. Before you, Gail, we had Meg Jones at the LCC? LCM. That's the foundation. Okay. Well, similar focus, but we have students that are already committed to their environmental work, and so it's they've grown up here and they have an appreciation for the resources that surround us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan Vickers. Okay, number 4, Lauren is our next speaker.
Hello, my name is Lauren Boeck. I'd like to start by thanking Laguna Canyon Conservancy for hosting us tonight. It's nice to have an opportunity to get in front of the community and share about my campaign and the value I think I would add to the LBOC School Board. So a little about me. I'm a career educator, a parent, and a community volunteer. My husband Brian and I have been married for 12 years, and we have 3 children currently attending LBUSD schools. Our daughter Estelle is in 6th grade, Eliza is in 3rd grade, and our son is in 1st grade, both at Elmore. Before pausing my career to raise our children full-time, I worked as a middle school teacher for 5 years and as an assistant principal for 5 years, also in middle school. I have a bachelor's degree in applied learning and development and a master's in educational administration from the University of Texas at Austin, which is one of the best education programs in the country. I loved working with students in classrooms and then leading teachers and staff through school leadership. In my role as an AP, I oversaw the educational experience of 350 students and served as the instructional leader for approximately 25 teachers and staff each year. My experience in the field of education is broad and comprehensive, and I am thankful I'm now able to give back to the community through my volunteer work. I am a regular classroom volunteer in my kids' classes and have served in a variety of PTA board positions both at the site and council level. I serve on the board of trustees and the executive committee for School Power, and I also currently serve on the recreation committee for the city of Laguna Beach. Previously, I served as co-coordinator of mothers of preschoolers for many years when my children were small, and I've served on a couple of school board appointed committees in another city where we lived prior to moving to Laguna. For those of you who haven't heard our story, Brian and I relocated to Southern California for his job 4.5 years ago and chose Laguna Beach specifically for the public schools. When he was offered his position at the end of February in 2020, we had no idea the world would shut down a couple weeks later. Since schools were closed, there were no tours to take, and my only option was to seek out any school data I could find online. Through my research, there was no doubt Laguna Beach Unified had the best schools in Orange County, so we decided that's where we would go. We found a realtor to conduct tours over FaceTime and leased a home for our first year sight unseen. With schools being closed and no one seeking out new friends, I started watching school board meetings to learn about the district. It was during that time that I developed a great appreciation for the board members and their public service. Like many parents, I was often frustrated that the schools were not open and our kids were forced to wear masks for an extended period of time, but I also understood the unknown of the new illness and the effects it would have on our community, along with the regulations from the state and county that often tied the hands of our board and administration. Thankfully, we have been able to move past those challenging years, and I'm thankful to be a part of Laguna Beach and experience the vibrancy of our town. We love living here, and our children are truly thriving in the schools. My decision to throw my hat in the ring for school board comes from my passion for public schools and my love for Laguna Beach. As I mentioned, I have an extensive background in education, both in pedagogy and leadership, and I have a vested personal interest in the schools. Since I have 3 young learners who have many years ahead of them. I'm not a politician, and I'm not coming into my campaign with a specific agenda. I'm a genuine and kind person, and I feel like I bring a fresh perspective as a relative newcomer who chose Laguna specifically for the schools. I would like to continue to see other families like ours choose Laguna for their home, and I'm confident we can work together to celebrate our successes and overcome the obstacles for the good of our school district and our community as a whole. Since I know the mission of Laguna Canyon Conservancy is related to protecting the environment and our beautiful open spaces, I wanted to touch on a few things I see happening in LBUSD that I would continue to support if I am elected to the board. First, how lucky are we that 3 of our 4 schools are bordered by vast open space. Our sites themselves allow us to foster the appreciation of nature in our students by allowing them to easily explore nature through field trips, guided hikes, and educational experiences with our local partners. My own children definitely have an increased appreciation of the environment from their experiences, particularly those that have been through partnerships with the state parks and also the Pine Air Association in Laguna Beach, which does a 4th grade field trip where they paint at Crystal Cove. I'd like to continue to see more focus on environmental issues in our curriculum, and I'm encouraged by the board's decision to approve the position of the coordinator of environmental literacy in 2023. This person's role is to work directly on ensuring environmental education for our students, and she is doing so by coordinating school site green teams, partnering in the development of environmental groups, staying up to date on legislative issues, and making sure our curriculum is aligned with the California environmental principles and concepts. Just one example of where we have seen impacts by her efforts is the high school engineering club installing solar panels at the TOW and Elmore Gardens. I see my kids directly benefiting from her efforts. I know on a larger scope, I've been encouraged by the district's efforts toward carbon neutrality by 2030. At the most recent board meeting on September 26th, I heard the presentation of the Energy Master Plan update by Jeff Dixon and Ryan Zeta. They laid out a plan for each of the district sites, which includes 4 steps in making that happen. I know there's a lot of work to be done to make these things happen, but I believe it is critical work toward environmental sustainability, and it's important that we continue to educate our children about human impact on the environment. We see it in our community with our increased fire risks and decrease in our air quality. Our children are inheriting the impacts of our bad choices, and I believe we have to work together to make changes for future generations. Additionally, with the recent passing of AB 285, a bill that requires schools to teach about causes of climate change and what communities can do to mitigate its impact, we want to make sure we're following the law. In conclusion, if I'm elected to the board, I have 3 main promises that I will make to our community. I will listen objectively and respectfully to all stakeholders, work to build trust and consensus within the community, and keep the students' best interests at the forefront of decision making. I am also humbled and honored to have received the endorsement of both the CSEA and LaBufa, the 2 LBUSD staff unions. In addition to those endorsements of many past school members, including the endorsements of many past school board members and other leaders within the city. I hope I can earn your vote.
Thank you, Lauren Boeck. That was wonderful. And now to the 5th. Notice I did not say last but not least, but you are. Howard Hills.
My glasses off so you won't mix me up with Buddy Holly. I'd like to begin by creating some context so that the linkage between our public education system and our sustainability mission that is so important to the Conservancy can be meaningfully drawn. I'm running for school board because I know from my own experience as a student, parent, and grandparent in our local schools that with sound stewardship, the kind of stewardship that I saw when I was in high school here, and that my youngest daughter experienced when she was in high school here, I know that with sound stewardship there could be good times ahead for our local public school students and families. It is not something to defend, but to be grateful for, that we can afford $33,000 per year per student, and that we have among the highest teacher salaries in the state, 4 of the most beautiful schools in the world, and that with $74 million of local property tax revenues every year, the school board has an annual budget of $85 million to support the success and dreams of a comparatively small population of 2,300 students. With that endowment by the community, we should have the best STEM, arts, civics, AP, honors, intermediate liberal arts, and vocations programs in the county, if not the state. And yes, we should have the best special education program in the county, with referral out of district only as a last resort or by request of parents. We should not have to spend $150 million to build a Santa Monica scale athletic facility, some say to attract new wealthy families with gifted athletes or scholars. And what does it say about our values as a community if at the same time we're trying to attract gifted students, we are busing our most vulnerable children to a new school in a community that is not their home? I'm sorry I get a little bit emotional about it. My daughter went to Stanford and has an MA in special education. So I get a little bit emotional about that issue. I volunteered for 4 years in a very intensive autistic education program, so I get a little bit emotional about that, I'm sorry. Nor do we need to build a Taj Mahal administrative building to try to attract, in the future, high-value senior administrative employees. Yet here we are, even though we have $25 million more to spend annually than we did 5 years ago, families have taken 700 students out of our schools over those same 5 years. And you can ascribe that decline in enrollment to a lot of different factors, but it also includes factors related to the fact that we are not getting the kind of test results and academic outcomes that the taxpayers are paying for when they pay that $74 million a year. One of the problems that we have is that we hear people talk about being data-driven and continuous improvement and some of these buzzwords that get used but every 4 years when people run for school board. But the fact of the matter is, we're not getting that incremental 5% improvement a year. We're declining. If you look at the CAST and the CAST results on science, math, and including the other English and other subjects, we're losing ground. And that is an important factor in the decline in enrollment. But I think we also need to note, going back to the sustainability issues that are so important to this organization, the plan that was proposed, you can call it a 10-year plan, you can call it a 2-year plan, but the plan that was attempted to be pushed through would have been the second largest construction project in the history of Laguna Beach. And so you ask yourself, and yet we castigate the members of the public who came forward and educated themselves and the city council and the school board and the community about the problems with that. But you know, I don't think that it's an issue about whether you should have a swimming pool, what size it is, or whether you should have an administration building. The issue is how it was done. And so when you talk about justifying it or modifying it or scaling it back and all that stuff, which people are trying to do before the election, as if it matters to anybody. But it's really a question of what happened. When the staff developed the proposal that had parking lots under the old high school and underground parking and sharing the joint parking with the city and the pools with the city, and if people want to still have a city school district pool, that's not the issue. The issue is that the way they did this is the staff presented it to the board. Somebody on the board said, oh, we got to go to the neighborhood first. We got to go to the community first. And the superintendent's position was, no, let's get a deal with the city. Let's get the plan in place. Let's get the architects. Let's get the engineering, and it'll be a fait accompli. And the board, unfortunately, went along with that. And that's an example of one of the things that concerns me most, and that is that we have over-delegated the authority of the board to the senior staff. And that's not consistent with the state education code model for governance of our public schools. The board is the district. Under section 35161 of the education code, the board has all executive and legislative powers. They can delegate those powers, but they remain legally responsible for how all delegated powers are exercised. And the idea when the special ed people showed up with 150 people and said, what are you doing sending our kids out of our town? The president of the board said, we don't have any authority over that. That decision was made by the staff. We don't have any authority over it. Well, I had a grandson whose father was in Iraq and Afghanistan for 3 years, and he had serious emotional problems, and he was up at TOW. He was 5th generation in our family to be in our local schools, and he was up at TOW, and he had a fantastic special education team pulled together for him. Am I done?
No.
Okay. I have a lot to say about the Conservancy and about the canyon and about the fact that the school district owns property in the canyon and is a neighbor in the canyon and needs to support the Conservancy on what it's trying to accomplish with the canyon. I'll try to get to that if we get another opportunity. But I would just end by saying that, you know, I think if somebody asked me what's gone wrong here, it reminds me of when I was general counsel of a federal agency that had a $10 billion a year budget. I had 120 people working for me, and I had a staff of 21 lawyers. And what I told them is what I would tell the school board if I was on the school board, and that is, we're all good people. We're doing good things every day. But the things that we do good every day don't justify not getting it right when we are not fair, and we're not honest, and we're not transparent, and we're not open. And so, what is the key to solving this kind of a political management problem that we have here? The reason I'm running is that you have to make it safe for people to come in and say, this is what we got wrong, and this is how we're going to fix it. And that's not happening here because for 10 years, it has not been safe to not go along with and support what they're saying. There are members of the board who have been silenced, there's members of the public that have been silenced, and at the point, the last thing I'll say is, grievances are the lifeblood of democracy. And the idea that 6 members of the school board would say that they determined that people with grievances were a waste of time, that says, that's not the Laguna Beach that I grew up in.
Thank you, Howard Hill. And how lucky are we to live in Laguna Beach where we have 5 people willing to put themselves out there in front of the whole population in order to work for us and our students. So we are just so lucky. So keeping in mind everybody's time, I have just a few questions that if we can ask them and get the answers from each candidate, we will, ask them to try and, limit it to a minute each. Maybe get you out of here, by 7:30 or so, because I'm sure there's plenty of other things people have on their calendars today. So, all right, so I'm going to ask a question that was submitted, and then we'll go this way first, and then we can reverse it on the next question. Okay, with low academic performance and minimal class offerings in science, with limited technology and engineering classes, and a struggling math program, how do you see LDHS turning this around while cultivating and inspiring students to enter these professions to possibly help develop new technologies for environmentally sound new energy sources, for instance? It's a long question.
All right, that is a rather long question for 1 minute. The reality is, at our elementary schools, the numbers are moving up. The program for intervention has gone through some changes at the middle school and high school as it's moved along. We've had some changes in administration, which have caused part of that problem. There is now intervention programs at Thurston and at the high school even more so being developed. So things don't happen in one day, but people do get hired and they do make the changes. Am I to say that every one of those areas can be addressed? We do have relationships with other schools where our students do go. We even have the program where they're going to junior colleges so that they can pick up things, that they need or want to take extra courses. As a matter of fact, we see someone in here that's son wanted to take Italian. They were able to do that. So that's been a long time ago. Those kids graduated in 2011. Let's not sit here and say that it's that bad. It is not. Look at the other sites and schools in our neighboring area. We are 2nd in the county and we are 15th in the state. And let me go back to that comments that we just talked about in regards to letting our students learn and maybe not hand-feeding them every little thing. We do have incredible teachers here. We have incredible classified staff and counselors. But the students also have to take responsibility. So with that, I do think our students are moving forward. Look at where they go off to college. The question would be is, do they stay at college? Or do they come home after 6 months? And why? It may not be due to academics. It may not be being prepared. And there's another great book called The Price of Privilege. And if you have a chance, read that. And then if you get done with that, read Queen Bees and Wannabes. That's a great one.
So hand it to Sheri.
Here, Sheri. You're coming out.
Or if you need me to repeat the
questions.
Quite lengthy for me.
Do you want to hear it? Sure.
Oh, okay. All right, maybe I should edit it. All right, with low academic performance and minimal class offerings in science and limited technology engineering classes, there's a struggling math program. How do you see the high school turning this around while still cultivating and inspiring students to enter those professions that will, of course, develop new technologies for environmentally sound energy sources?
I think I got it. So I think there seems to be a disconnect between, there seems to be a couple of things. One, the data on where our schools are ranked is not consistent. Some models show us second in the county, and some show us 211th, depending on which data you're looking at. So I don't even think I'm going to go there with this question, because I don't think it makes sense. We have excellent programs in our elementary schools for science and the hands-on methods of which they teach. We have specifically focused programs at both elementary schools. We have a beautiful garden that was established that, from what I understand, is used well. But we don't have those same consistent types of learning all the way through the high school. I would love to see more robotics. I would love to see hydroponics being introduced, because, world hunger being in 2050, water issues. We have the idea that we have an engineering program as a club is a great idea, but this is a club. We have this flow program, which is a wonderful program, and that is a great relationship with the community, and it's a beautiful thing that our district is doing, but it's a moment. It's an event. It's a unit within the curriculum. It's not filtered within the education overall. So I think there needs to be a broader effort to thread some of these things throughout the entire curriculum. It would be ideal if we had a much more robust program. We have integrated science, which I know is very pushed back with the community, especially from the science community. Parents came in and they were very upset about the idea of integrated science, and I know I reached out to my science friends and they said, oh, integrated science is great, it's gonna combine all of the ideas of science. But when they added integrated science, they took away biology, they took away chemistry, they took away some of the sciences that I know doctors now would look back and say, well, you need these things, and we don't have them. You go from integrated science 1 and 2, which parents pushed back on, and lo and behold, integrated science 3 appeared, and that was not even discussed. And so you have these options, and then you go right into AP, chemistry or biology. And one of the things that came out of an interview from the students in April that was just released a couple of weeks ago was that they wanted this transitional class. They wanted an honors level class where they could go from the integrated sciences to the APs, and there's nothing in between. So I'd like to see us do a little bit more robust. I'd like to see more hands-on efforts from the students to work more with different programs, with the different organizations that we have as part of an ongoing whether it's a job program, whether it's an after-school program, and part of the clubs, not just something that is controlled by our district, but something that is a broader partnership between the students, the clubs, the community, as more of a coalition of activities that we can do together, because that, to me, is what the direction our community needs to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Although with some of the previous comments made, I'm not sure that you will think that what I'm saying is honest or true, but I guarantee you that I do my best to provide accurate information. We have a tremendous number of curriculum offerings at the high school. As was mentioned, we have science programs in the elementary. I think the question is specifically directed at the higher levels. Integrated science is just that. It integrates the many facets of science. We spend a lot of time getting the teachers to support going to integrated science because the research showed that was the way to go. We provide a lot of training, and it has been well received, contrary to what I'm hearing tonight. I have not heard that, the negative part of that. It isn't that those other classes went away, it's that they're integrated. And one thing I will definitely disagree with is, I think it's unfair to the students of Laguna Beach High School to say we have low academic performance. That is a misnomer, and I think it doesn't reflect what our students are doing in the classroom the education that they leave here with, or the fact of the colleges that they go on to and get into a seemingly a great result and a number of acceptances to colleges. So I don't find that reflects the courses that we offer. We also have a lot of offerings through the CCA, which used to be the ROP, and you can find things like robotics and that. And yes, for our students, only some of the courses are here on our campus, but they are available at other campuses, and it's a joint effort between Capitola Unified and Laguna Beach Unified. So I think we have, I think the problem for a lot of our students is we have so many offerings and they don't have enough time, because they're involved in other things besides just their academic classes, and those things like athletics or drama or dance, those take a lot of time. And so I think it's more the frustration that they can't do everything. But I feel that we have a lot of offerings, and we are keeping up to date in those fields. Whether engineering is a club, still available. Thank you.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that since we talked about accountability, I'd just like to say in a respectful way, I'd like to hold the president of the school board accountable right now, because she has a habit, and I don't say this in a mean spirit, it's just based on my experience, that when people talk, and she then has follow-up comments, she often says that they're inaccurate, they're misinformed. And in my own case, when that was said to me, I emailed her and said, if I said anything inaccurate, please tell me what it is and I'll correct the record. And she said, no, don't worry about it. And then subsequently, she stated on the record in an open meeting that I had never made that offer. So that's just a question of good faith and integrity, and I think it is about accountability. But I'd also say that in a recent meeting, when it was pointed out, when there was a discussion about the fact that we have 50% of our high school seniors, the kids do really a good job at the lower levels. We shouldn't be trying to justify our program in high school on the backs of the little kids. We should be looking honestly at what's going on to our high school students. And half of our high school students are graduating without being proficient in math. And the board president said, well, some people aren't good at math. That was her response. And that basically, I'm not good at math, so what is it, 3%, 5%, 10%? Of that 50% that isn't proficient, how many of them are actually not good at math? Well, I count myself in that group, but I would like to think that we're not going to write off the entire 50% as not having the potential to be proficient, because that's essentially what was said. I'd also like, if I can, just to say with respect to the priorities of the Conservancy, if I get elected, I'm going to make a program for conservation, open space, sustainability, much more robust than what we have, and frankly much more robust than what's been proposed by the school district in their plan for environmental literacy and sustainability. I think that the plan they have, first of all, you didn't hear it tonight when they spoke about it, but their plan is not really much in the way of empowerment of kids with education. That's kind of an abstraction that's mentioned a lot. I used to, when I worked in Washington, I had a lot of these consultants making these glossy reports for me. I know how to see through the gloss. The reality is what they're really talking about is solar installations at the high school, charging, electric car charging facilities, and doing a lot of good things that would be good to do to make the place carbon neutral. But the problem is they've created this sustainability program separate from the master facilities program. So you don't know they're talking about another $20 million, and they're talking about borrowing the money to do it, not living within our means like the families in town and the taxpayers have to do. They don't want to live within their means. They want to do a $20 million project to solar the high school, which I would be in full support of. But the point is, they don't want to do it. They don't want the discipline of budget, and they want to borrow the $20 million, and that will cost $10 million in debt costs. That $10 million could go into actually teaching the kids. how to get their boots on the ground out in the canyon, and how to have a program where the kids, by the time they get, my proposal is, by the time a kid graduates from Laguna Beach High School, he's an expert on Laguna Canyon. He's an expert on open space. He's an expert on sustainability. If he chooses to live a sustainable lifestyle, that by the time they graduate, they will all be certified experts in sustainability.
Sure, I'll take the question. Okay. All right.
Okay. Back to the original question, which everyone sort of touched on and then digressed a little. But the perception is that there's low academic performance and minimal class offerings in science, technology, and engineering, and a struggling math program. So how do you see the high school turning this around while cultivating and inspiring students to enter these professions to possibly help develop new technologies for environmentally sound energy sources?
Okay, well, I would have to start by saying that the majority of my experience in the district so far is elementary and middle school level, so I would have to dig into that data a little bit further to see exactly where we are failing at the high school level. I am not hearing that in my circles or from my friends that have high school students. I also know that the preliminary CAST data from last year has not come out yet. It hasn't been released because it hasn't been certified, but I do know that there are a couple data points that have come out that have been sort of leaked, to try to promote some of the positive things that have been happening in our district. At the high school level, we had an increase of 17 percentage points for math, which is strong, and coming out of COVID, there was a lot of learning loss that occurred during that time, so to show that our students are making progress is great. We also know that 87.5% of our high school 11th graders met standard, which is the highest. It's the top tier of only a few high schools in the state of California. So we are doing good things. There's always room for improvement. As I said, I would need to dig deeper into the data to know where that improvement needs to happen, and I will assure you that I will do that if I'm elected to the board. I will tell you at the elementary level, our principal, Dr. Julie Hatchell, was awarded California State Principal of the Year for elementary for last year. We are incredibly proud of her and incredibly honored to have her at our school. One of the things that I saw last year, I had 3 students at El Morro, a 5th grader, a 2nd grader, and a kindergartner, and one of the things I saw happening at El Morro was Julie created WIN time, which stood for what I need, and the students during that time could go to their various classes. My 5th grader is in the GATE program. She's an incredibly gifted learner. She would go to her GATE class during that time. My 2nd grader at the time, now 3rd grader, is behind in reading because she was in kindergarten during COVID. She wore a mask and hid behind it the entire year and was about 2 years behind in reading. So she went to her tier 3 intervention during that time. And then my son, they're still trying to figure him out. So they're still trying to get the squirrel to sit in the chair. But anyway, during that, through that experience, I see how we're differentiating learning for our children, and it's happening across the board. So as a board member, I will continue to promote and support that differentiated learning for all learners that have all sorts of needs and both accelerating and resources as well. So thank you.
Okay, so moving along, we're getting a little behind in time. Most all of the candidates up here have touched on something that's very near and dear to Laguna Canyon Conservancy, which of course is that we do want to see our youth involved in more conservation training and maintenance out in the Laguna Canyon area in particular. So we appreciate hearing what you all know and what you are aware of and how you would, of course, carry this on in the future if you should get elected. So thank you very much. So the last question that I have written at this point, and I think it's probably one that many are concerned about. So it's been a source of much discussion and controversy. So I'm going to read the whole question and I'm going to reread it shorter and ask the candidates to answer this question. And I'll ask everybody respectfully to just let them finish their talks and hear them out. Okay, so, most everyone understands the need for facility improvement. But with district enrollment down over 25% and sinking lower, do you think it right to approve the massive facility master plan that will have a huge environmental impact and cause major traffic and evacuation issues, and would saddle the aging population of Laguna Beach with a possibly $100 million bond even before construction starts, that they and their families will be paying for years to come? So, I think we all know that there is a need for facility improvement, but there is a concern about the enrollment going down, about having a large facility master plan approved and the impact on our neighborhoods and the environment. So, I'm going to let the candidates, I'm going to start this way, so Lauren, you're going to get back up here again and give us your thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, I know the facilities master plan is a hot button issue. I am in agreement that I didn't love the way that it rolled out. In my prior, I mentioned that I served on a board committee in my prior district where we lived, and in that experience I served on the capital needs planning committee for that group, where I spent a year working with a committee that the school board had chosen to go through all of the campuses, all of the facilities to look at what the needs of the district are, and then we all came together and ended up building a bond package that we passed. So knowing that experience, I have seen how community involvement can work in an effective manner. In this case, I believe that probably with the best intentions, but that the district kind of worked in isolation and came out with a grand plan, which we all know is the Laguna way. You come out with a big plan and then scale it back later on. I've experienced it in my own home with a building project that was occurring across the street. But we can all work together. I believe that there is a way that the community can be involved in the facilities master planning, and we can work to find solutions that work for all of us. I know that with the pool's a hot button issue. I watched the presentation of the pool modernization, the most recent one, and I think that everybody that was in the room that night that was speaking both for and against the pool felt some sort of compromise. I think that we've gotten further on in the process, and that we can come to an agreement about what we're going to do going forward. I do want to speak about the declining enrollment. As we all know, California has a declining population, a declining birth rate, and a mass exodus. Being from Texas, my family's still there. Every person I meet in California has a friend or family member who has moved to Texas, and my family has met numerous people from California. So I don't believe it's a district issue that our population is declining. I believe it's a birth rate issue, and I believe it's a population issue. And for us, it doesn't really matter. And the reason why is because we are community funded, as we all know. I did a little research, let me pull it, on as our enrollment goes down, our ratios go down as well. So in our high school, the student to teacher ratio is 18-1. In the Corona Del Mar, right down the road, it's 22-1. And then if you look at schools in Irvine, Northwood High School and Beckman High School, they are both 27-1. So I'm not too concerned about declining enrollment, because we still have the funding we need, and it just creates a better environment for our kids. Thank you.
Well, I have to say, the idea that we're better off if people are leaving because it means more money for the people that stay is an idea that I think is wrong. And there are demographic reasons for loss of enrollment. I know that I've talked to many families who left for other reasons. I don't want to get into a big argument about this, but when you have a situation where I can tell you 10 years ago, and in the last 10 years, there have been many situations where people who have had problems have gone and sought redress, and what they were told was, if you don't like it, you can leave. And the reality is that this is a school district where I have seen that And I know up close and personal that that takes place. And what that means is that because we are not attendance-based, our budget is not based on attendance, we have the option of telling people to leave if they don't like it. And it happens, and it's happened a lot. And, you know, I think that going back to the problem of the issue of the pool again, what I would recommend, practice what I preach, make it safe for people to come forward and say, you know, we didn't do this right. Let's do this right now. I would encourage the board to not rush an approval. I would encourage the board to go back and do it right and go to the neighborhood, meet with the neighborhood. My grandma was in the Laguna Beach High School PTA in 1938, and she was there when the community did this wonderful thing of creating a school that serves the whole community, but creating it in a neighborhood, as we really did with all of our schools. And it's a beautiful success story. Let's not turn it into something else. Go back, meet with the community, I mean, with the neighborhood first, and then with the larger community. And if there's a compromise, present the compromise in a way that doesn't divide the community and leave people feeling poisoned by the way in which it was handled. Am I out of time? Not the first time.
Our oldest son graduated in 1988, and he was the last large class to come through. Laguna has had declining enrollment since then, with a slight bump in the mid-90s. It's been an ongoing problem for us for many years. A lot of it does have to do with affordability of housing, and the fact that, as mentioned before by Margaret Warder, that families can't afford to move here. The housing is very, very pricey. The other is the declining birth rate, which has been a factor before. That there is some ebb and flow with that. I don't foresee right now any big boost in student enrollment coming. So it's been an ongoing challenge for many years of how do we continue to offer robust programs, particularly at freshman and high school when the numbers drop. And so what we do is, what Lauren mentioned, is we take it as a positive that we can have lower class size, which means more direct contact from teachers to students, more time for the student to do their work in class and get their questions answered with the teacher's assistance. When you have a class of 30 or 40 students, that doesn't happen. And so we're very fortunate in that. But we have dedicated ourselves over the years, and this goes back to when there was a superintendent here, Teresa Dom. Do we commit to still offering those classes at the high school, those AP classes, when they only have 10 students? And we would commit to that, and we would commit to providing the funding for those because it was important for those 10 students. So I think it is a challenge on that aspect. As far as the construction that will be coming over the 10 years, if any of you have been around long enough to know that we used to have the two best tennis courts at the high school on the corner of St. Anne's and Park, and those are gone because there's a building there, a two-story building, which also houses the cafeteria and houses math and language programs. We needed those, but it was a sacrifice to give what was open space and, as I said, the two best tennis courts. So at that time, as that construction went on, it was not a major issue, and I have been assured that we'll pay the same attention this time. It's not going to be an ongoing traffic situation. It's going to be well handled, and I think it will be a very successful program. We did take a step back. We have had many meetings with community members. I don't have all the numbers right on the tip of my tongue, but the meetings with neighbors, meetings with larger community groups, the hundreds of inputs that we've received, and the projects were scaled back in reaction to that. If we were to do it again, that's why the city folks the community members are up at top of the world tonight, because the plan was put out as a 72-unit plan. It's like a starting point, and now what I understand is they're hearing tonight a scaled back plan. Personally, because in a sense that's what we did, we went around with community members involved in the groups to each of the school sites, and it was like, if you could say what would be the best things you could have at your campus, what would they be? So it was a starting point, and it's been drastically modified, and I do believe that it will be done in an environmentally friendly manner. Thank you.
Thank you. there's an expression in business about whether, when you make a statement about this is how we always do it, that's like a non-starter. So when we say it's the Laguna way, or this is a starting point at $150 million because that's how we always do it, that's why we need to change things. Because there's no reason why we should not have started with, we need to fix this pool, we need to address the concerns with the pool, and this is what it needs. It doesn't meet CIF standards for the men's water polo. That's a non-starter. We have to make it a little bigger. Then you bring all of the neighbors in that will be impacted because they did buy a house next to a 25-yard pool or 25-meter pool. And what are they willing to accept? That's a starting point. Not a $150 million pool with a 5-story or 2-story parking structure and lighted tennis courts and everything else. That's a non-starter. We had a community start again, but we can't. We need to build a pool that's going to maximize what we need, but save the most amount of money. And then use that money to either fund better education for science, to expand and make a more robust environmental program for our kids, so when they graduate, they have the knowledge and the ability to go out and do some amazing things in the world. We need to partner better with our teams and our companies here in town and make this more of a cyclical program where the money that our taxes are going into our education is then coming back out in our students.
It isn't gonna happen. So you gotta think about, there's big plans, and then there's yet narrowed down plans. There's meetings called local controlled funding. I advise that you, as individuals, you're very involved and want to know, you go to these meetings. I know that Sheri has attended these meetings with me when I was the president of the union, because I've attended so many of these meetings for the last 20 years, and every board meeting. So I will tell you that, and in fact, that's Dee out there, and in Dee's favor, she goes to those meetings, and so does Jim. So bottom line, it isn't, something starts out big, the architects get hired, what's this, all the dreams. In one meeting, one of the senior kids said, we definitely gotta have a lot of electric chargers in the parking lot. It was like, to charge their Teslas. Excuse me? But anyway, just stop and think about that. A couple things I just want to say on our facilities. We need to upgrade some of them. The solar power, TOW has solar power. It has worked fine for all the years I've worked there. I do want to comment, Lauren, on one comment you made, and it's not critical. Dr. Hatchell was at my school at TOW for 2 years before she went to El Moro. The WIN program, what every individual needs, was established 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And unfortunately, at one site, did not get implemented exactly the way it was supposed to go. It is now being implemented the way it was set up to be originally at El Moro, which is fantastic. It's my passion. So I'm very, very pleased with that. As far as our gardens and all of the things that are happening, I ask you to go to your website, to your board. Here is the sustainability package. It clearly talks about what programs are going to be given to the students at different times. We are so fortunate to have an education literacy person with our environment that has stepped over from the science program at Thurston and is doing an incredible job. We are also a green school district. The green ribbon, TOW had it first. For the great teachers that worked on that project, I was on it part-time. So we have done these things. We've done fabulous things, and we can continue to do them. But when there is this sense of them and you, then this feeling is unhealthy, and it's unhealthy for your students. 2 girls just committed suicide. Did you hear that? In Saddleback, within 1 week of each other, young, beautiful women. When we talk of all the discontent and all of the hatred and the just downright nastiness, your children feel that vibe. So I ask you, I don't have any children in the district, and my daughter, well, maybe we'll have some grandchildren someday, is just basically saying, we can't talk like this. This needs to be a community together. and the board did change things around now, that the presentation happens and then the community can ask questions, I'm totally in agreement with that. That is important because you're just asking naively questions. How many of you watch the board meeting every month? Put it on, watch it every month. Okay? Good, let's have a couple hands. I'm not even involved for the last 3 years. And I watch it every month. Because I want to know what's going on in this little town. So I say to you, rather than be naysayers of what's wrong, be part of the solution. And part of the solution is voting people that know and understand. And as I said before, I'm not angry and I'm not mad. And I should and could be about a lot of things. Thank you.
Okay, well, you know, it's almost 8 o'clock. I think we gave all the candidates a pretty good time to speak and make a lot of their opinions known. I hope everyone got some of the questions answered they might have had about the school district and running for the school board. So I'd like to really wrap it up at this time and give everybody a chance to go home or go to another meeting. And please go make sure all your friends and family that are registered voters vote early and often. And I don't think we want to be talking anymore. And if the candidates will stay afterwards, if you have some burning questions for them, I'm sure some of them will be here for a little while longer. There's still some more refreshments. So thank you all for coming tonight. And we will be posted on our website, LagunaCanyonConservancy.org. I would say in 2 days, this meeting will be up. So if you feel you missed anything, check it out. Thanks again for coming. Good night.